Chapter 1. Where are you headed? The driver asked with a tight smile. His large head twisted over his shoulder as big round eyes stared at me intently from the front seat. Tiny gray stubble covered over his upper lip and chin. My mouth fell open, but no words came out. Had I really forgotten where I was headed? My mom always said I had a memory like a goldfish. Maybe she was right. I'd been lying so frequently to my parents about where I was going for 5 hours a day, 3 days a week, that I should have been able to say where I was going in my sleep. Aventura Mall, food court, I remembered. The driver spun around in his small seat to face the nook that cradled his cracked touchscreen phone. With one chubby finger, he typed my location into the phone, backspacing more than a few times after pressing multiple letters at once with the edge of his skin. "You're in luck," he said, his large cranium resting back against the headrest. "No traffic. We'll be there in 10 minutes. I flicked a thumb in the air. My lips were tight. I wanted to cut the useless chatter and get going. Aaron was waiting for me in the mall parking lot. For months, I've been telling my parents that I work at Abercrombie and Fitch, but the truth is, I've never worked a single day in my 17 years of existence. Contrary to what my parents believe, I'm not irresponsible. I just attract car accidents like it's my business. After my last car accident, they got fed up and took my BMW away. I admit the other 6 accidents were my fault, but the last one happened because an old lady ran into me at a red light. That's the DMV's fault for not taking her license away. That accident was the final straw for them. They poured out a whole list of ways that I'm irresponsible. I completely muted their voices in my head until I heard one of them say that I needed to get a job. When I heard that, the volume turned all the way up. It's not that I don't want to work at some point in my life. I'm just not good at the jobs that they hire high schoolers to do. Plus, I'm not cheap. They made a deal with me. If I'd be responsible enough to find a part-time job and keep it for a while, I'd get my car back. And to make sure I actually go to work, they made me a Lyft account that they can track. But I outsmarted them. I take the Lyft to work 3 days a week at their expense, and then Erin picks me up from the mall and we go to her place. So essentially, my parents are paying for my transportation to get laid. I'd say that's very responsible of me. We slowly moved through the crowded parking lot. My eyes sifted through each row of cars to find the compact white Audi CUV with the anything but compact, beautiful blonde behind the wheel. After looking past dozens of exotic cars I'd kill to own, I found her. I could feel my heart about to burst through my chest. Each time my eyes set on her, it was like seeing her for the first time. Erin was staring down at her phone, twirling a lock of her hair around one of her tiny fingers. I unlatched myself from the seatbelt and stuck my head into the front of the car. "Let me out in front of that white Audi, please." I pointed, my finger extending anxiously close to the driver's pale cheek. The gear shift disappeared into the driver's hand as he shifted the car into park, and the doors unlocked simultaneously. The Lyft app popped onto my home screen, asking if I'd like to leave a tip. I hovered over the option for 30% and collapsed a hard finger onto it. It wasn't my money, so I had no problem being generous. The driver looked up at me through the rear view mirror, his lips stretched into a smile. I gave him a gentlemanly nod with the tilt of my head, and then I pushed open the door and climbed out. Erin dropped her phone gently into her lap as I approached the passenger side of her car. I tugged on the heavy white handle and swung the door open. As I plopped down onto the black leather seat cushion, the pores immediately sent bursts of air against my jeans. The strong scent of mango slapped across my face through the air fresheners that were attached to the central vents. Before I could close the door, Erin moved a soft hand through the tiny hairs on my scalp and guided me in her direction. Her warm tongue crept into my mouth and stretched my lips apart. I placed my thumb on the outer lobe of her ear and slowly moved it up and down as she let out a gasp of air. "That tickles," Erin chuckled, burying her chin into her chest as she moved back into her seat. I cocked my head to the side, smiling. "You say that every time." "That's because you won't stop doing it." Her round blue and green eyes rolled back as if she was annoyed, but her expression quickly fell back into a smile. "Are you ready to go?" "What's the rush?" I laced my fingers with hers and pulled her closer to me. "The parking lot is empty." My eyebrows collided with each other, pushing the other brow higher with each passing second as I smirked. "Les Fairbanks, I've taught you well." Erin glanced at the back seat with the corner of her eye as her shoulders relaxed and she inched closer to me. My fingers clenched a fistful of her blonde dreadlocks as I pulled her back and pressed my lips hard against hers. Her thin lips drowned in my mouth, filling my tongue with the taste of honey. They were no match for my beefy puckers as I suctioned liquid from her wet mouth with every breath. My right hand grew a brain of its own, moving to the edge of her dark blue shirt, fighting the outer seams away with my fingers and making their way into the inner cup of her bra. I felt her right nipple harden as my thumb and index finger drew tight circles and she let out a soft moan. My cell phone wiggled from side to side in my pocket, an obvious text message that wasn't going to get a response anytime soon. But the wiggle went on and on and on. It could be important, I thought to myself. It could be. My parents. I released Erin's lips from my grasp. Her head snapped back and she stared at me through squinted eyes. I thrusted my shoulders into the air and then lowered them, pouting my lips as I glanced back at Erin. "Hey, Mom," I said with heavy breath, pretending to be winded. "I'm running toward my job now, so I'm not late. What's up?" "How far away are you?" she asked. "Haley and I are at your store." My shoulders melted back into the seat. I could feel my stomach moving through my lower body and trying to escape out my butt. I'll be there in a second," I stuttered. The phone dropped to the floor and I hoped it shattered for good, as if my mom would go away with the phone. The phone landed upright onto the floor. I could still hear my mom's voice inaudibly saying what sounded like gibberish. My fingers circled over the red button and pressed down. "I have to go." I leaned in and planted a dry kiss on Erin's cheek before bursting out of the car in a fit of desperation and racing towards the entrance to the mall. My eyes rotated to look at every possible scenario for the fastest route to the second floor of the mall, where the Abercrombie store was. The upward escalator was directly in my vision and I started up. I couldn't wait, so I leapt up the steps to hurriedly make it to the second floor. I sprinted towards the store and then stopped on a dime once I noticed it was in front of me. I tiptoed past the already open double doors. The entryway divided the store into two sides, women on the left and men on the right. The partition in the center featured a large image of a shirtless man with his arms in the air, one arm covering his right eye as he stared straight at everyone who entered. I poked one side of my head into the guys section and did a quick roundabout with my eyes. "Hey, what's up?" a male employee said with a rehearsed smile. I ignored him and pushed forward, allowing one foot to pull me into the store. I saw Mom, slowly pacing the perimeter of a round table that carried what looked to be the same shirts, but in various colors. My sister, Haley, stood a few steps away from her, pressing her finger against the nozzle of a perfume bottle as it sprayed mist onto her neck. Mom snapped her neck towards the front of the store, in my direction. I catapulted all my weight back onto one leg, landing in the entryway. I spun around and took two giant leaps onto the girls' side of the store. My eyes studied the room, filtering through all the female clothing options to find something unisex. Now was the time to do my best thespian impression. I spotted a fuzzy white sweater with horizontal black stripes throughout the middle and on the sleeves. Without hesitation, I snatched the sweater from its hanger and threw it over my head. I didn't even check to see what size it was. The inside of the sweater pinched tightly against my face, constricting my breathing as I placed both hands on the collar and pulled down. My head burst through the top of the garment. I took the outseam in my hand and stretched it down as I slid one arm through the sleeve. It took a few wiggles, but eventually my hand made it through the hole. Then I shot my other arm through the last remaining sleeve. The bottom of the sweater rested just above my belly button. I wrapped the fabric in my hand and tugged down, but the sweater just catapulted back up. "Less?" Mom asked. Her voice was unsure of herself. Perhaps she was hoping that it wasn't her son in front of her wearing teenage girl clothes. "Hey, Mom," I said with a cold shoulder. Crossing one foot with the other, I twisted around to face her, snatching a perfectly folded shirt from the round table next to me during my twist. "I'm just working, folding clothes." I raised the now unfolded shirt in the air and held it inches from her eyes. "I see." She raised a curious eyebrow. "Is it a requirement for men to wear women's clothing if they are going to work on the female side of the store?" I opened my mouth to speak, but before I could respond, a freckle-faced girl appeared. "Hi, can I help you guys with anything?" she asked cheerfully. She was obviously an employee at the store because a microphone was clipped onto her hip. She wore a gray and white plaid shirt with the brand's iconic moose logo and dark distressed jeans. Her hair was dark brown and came to a halt just above her shoulders. "Oh no, my son works here." Mom slightly raised the corners of her lips as she glanced at me and then back at the girl. The girl cocked her head to one side and peered at me through squinted eyes, as if she were trying to recollect ever meeting me. I knew I needed to act fast before she compromised me. With both hands stuffed into my pockets, I shrugged. "I'm new," I nodded. "Haven't you been working here for like 2 months?" Haley asked, pacing around me and finally setting in the open space between Mom and the freckle-faced girl. Her face morphed into a hard smirk, with her cheeks puffing out as if she were trying to contain laughter. Sir, with all due respect, I'm one of the managers and I've never seen you before, the freckle-faced girl said sympathetically. She sucked in her lips and her eyes fell into their corners as she looked away from me. That's funny, Mom said with raised eyebrows. When I first got here, I spoke to another manager who had never heard of you either, Les. That's probably because they usually put me in the fitting rooms by myself. I don't get to interact with many people over there. My hands fell deeper into my pockets as I bobbed my head up and down. My eyes were set on the freckle-faced girl, hoping she'd just shut up. Mom laid a hand on my arm and clenched down gently, forcing my feet to take 2 steps in her direction as she pulled me into her. She was about a head shorter than me. All it took was a look at her large, honey-colored eyes to tell which mood she was in. When she was happy, her eyelids raised and allowed more of her beautiful golden pupils to show. But when she was upset, her pupils almost completely vanished and her face relaxed into the saddest expression I had ever seen. And it was that same sad, disappointed, pupil vanishing expression that was looking up at me. I was so proud of you. Mom closed her eyes for just 1 second, and when they opened again, hints of red started to move in and take over in the white space. The freckle-faced girl took large backward steps away from us, and then she disappeared into the next room. Mom, it's just a meaningless high school job. This has nothing to do with my future. I snatched my arm back and enclosed her hand in both of mine, squeezing gently. I'm sorry that I lied. I just wanted my car back. Her eyes lowered, glancing down at her hand as if she was contemplating how she was going to break free from my grasp. She looked back up at me, seemingly ignoring that thought. Les, your father and I weren't born into these luxuries. With her free hand, she pressed against her chest and then half-circled the room with an extended arm. We didn't ask you to get a job to hurt you. It was to teach you responsibility. She raised a pointed finger to my eyes, tightening her lips to create wrinkles around her mouth. And we hoped you would make friends who weren't so privileged. I released her hand and leaned back against a shelf that was stacked with jeans. So I'm not responsible because all my friends come from money. No, Les, you're not responsible because you're not responsible. Haley chimed in. This time my sister wasn't smiling, and she stood with folded arms and no expression. Mom snapped her neck in Haley's direction, her eyebrows falling by the second. It was her signal for my sister to shut the heck up. I know how much you love fashion, Mom smiled, her eyelids slowly opened to reveal more and more gold. I'm going to talk to your father. We'll pull some strings and get you an interview with a major fashion house. That would be awesome, I said. My ears perked up, stretching seemingly off my head as I waited to hear more. I could feel the female sweater that I was wearing folding up toward my chest. I clutched the collar and lifted the sweater over my head. What did you have in mind? My head was stuck inside the sweater as I struggled to break free. I've known the manager of the Aero store in Hialeah for a long time. I'll call her today and set up an interview for you. Sound may have been sort of muffled while my head was stuck inside the sweater. I thought I heard my mom say she was going to get me an interview to work at a cheap clothing store in the ghetto. My fingers tiptoed down my back to find the opening of the sweater. Once I felt it, I pulled the fabric completely over my head and my arm shot out of the fabric. I tossed the sweater onto the round table next to me and it landed on top of some perfectly folded shirts. Where did you say you were going to get me an interview at? I leaned my head in, tilting my ear directly in front of my mom's mouth. Aero in Hialeah. She lowered her eyebrows at me, just like she did with Haley. It was her signal for me to shut the heck up.
What did you think about that amazing teaser? Pretty cool, huh? If you'd like to finish the story, which I'm pretty sure you do, the details are in the description below. Now smash that subscribe button if you don't want to miss out on your next favorite novel. And don't forget to hit the notification bell.